Oh, yes, sorry about that. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As some of you may previously know or be acquainted with our bioethics webinar series, Kuwaykib, which we have had for almost a couple of years now since the start of the pandemic. Now, today is the first webinar in our new series, Kuwaykib, which is a sort of a branch from our usual series that is dedicated to medical students, particularly to provide them with a platform to present and discuss bioethics topics of their own interest. And for those of who have pursued research on those topics as well. So today we are glad to have with us Mr. Joseph Bashour, who has courageously accepted to be the first student to present in this series. Now, just a brief background of Joseph, who has he has earned his bachelor's degree from AUB with a background in biology, biomedical engineering, design, and philosophy. He is currently a second-year medical student, also at AUB FM. His interests are in mental health advocacy, clinical and biomedical ethics, and humanistic medicine, which have driven him to serve as the current president of Khilkhal, the student volunteer initiative that is centered around bioethics education, humanism, endorsement, and community engagement under the patronage of the Salim Al-Hus Bioethics and Professionalism Program. He has also participated in multiple conflict resolution and peace-building programs, including New Gen Peace Builder and Trainer Facilitator. So through his work with SHPPP, he's been working in collaboration with us for a while now. He has conducted research on the ethical considerations of artificial intelligence in medical education, which he will be presenting today under the title AI in Medical Education, Widen the Gap or Level the Field. So we hope that this will be an engaging and thought-provoking talk, and it will open the doors for discussion, and further it will intrigue other students and to pursue their own exploration of bioethical issues. So Joseph, are you
yes,
you want to share your screen and start?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you for that introduction, and a very big thank you to Salim Al-Hus Bioethics and Professionalism Program, and particularly Dr. Taria Arawi for her guidance and for this opportunity. Can you see my screen properly?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
A pleasure to work with you, Joseph. We're very proud to have you with us.
Thank you very much. All right, so without further ado, we are going to dive into the topic. I will be presenting today the ethical considerations of having artificial intelligence in medical education. In particular, we are going to take some considerations of whether it widens the gap or levels the field. However, this may have different facets of explanation, as we will see. So this is a small discussion outline. We're going to begin by explaining what artificial intelligence is, the fundamental rise of artificial intelligence, how it infiltrated the medical field. We are going to explore some attitudes towards AI in medical education from the point of view of medical students. We will briefly highlight some benefits of AI in medical education, and then mention some ethical considerations. Then I shall open the floor for discussions. If there are any questions throughout the presentation, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. Okay, what is artificial intelligence exactly? artificial intelligence, commonly referred to as AI, is a domain of study, research, and development of computer networks that are capable of reaching human-level intelligent functioning. These neural networks, as they are called, can perform tasks that normally require human-level intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, complex decision-making, and interlanguage translation. There are so many applications that AI can be put towards. Most commonly, and the biggest scales, if you want, is that they are used in industrial manufacturing, in mass marketing, data analytics, autonomous robotics, be it in industry or transportation, defense infrastructure, language processing, security systems, and most recently, surgical and medical services. Here we have a small table that also mentions some other applications, such as chatbots that are used on websites as help guides and whatnot. Rise of AI. There have been different, if you want, chapters to the story of AI. The very earliest fundamentals come from 1943. The underlying framework for what is today known as artificial intelligence is the neural network. In 1943, Warren McCulloch and Walter Pitt designed the first model of networking artificial neurons. These networks, like the human body's actual brain and neural network, have a very layered architecture in which each connection point, called a node in neural networking, has a capability to process inputs and forward outputs to other nodes in the network. So we have these collection of points, whereas different computers, if you want, are like mini processors, communicate with one another. And the points at which they meet to communicate is called a node. A few years later, Donald Hebb, a mathematician, introduced a rule for modifying the connection strength between these nodes or neurons. The rule is today called Hebbian learning. It dictates that the strength of the connection between any two nodes in the network is either strengthened or weakened in proportion to their activation. This means that when you have an input that triggers the activation of more than one node, a connection between these two nodes is formed and strengthened. So this encourages independent learning in a sense, whereas the network begins to learn how to process certain pattern recognition networks. It's similar to the body's immune defense system. It recognizes certain patterns that gives it a result of how to proceed. Moving forward, we have the Turing test. Alan Turing, who was an English mathematician and pioneer in machine learning, had one of the largest impacts on the outcome of World War II. His work on computer networks and machinery and pattern recognition signals enabled the Allies to decipher intercepted access military communications. During the war, the Nazis had a machine called the Enigma. This was an enciphering machine which could make messages unreadable unless you have another Enigma machine to decrypt it. Alan Turing designed a machine that was able to crack the code and thus enabled intercepted messages to be read, and thus the plans, the military plans of the Axis side were fouled. Turing published an article in 1950 titled Computing Machinery and Intelligence, in which he proposed a test that could check the machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior equivalent to a human. The Turing test functions in the following way. You have one interviewer or one interrogator, and you have two people that will be answering questions that this interrogator is putting forth. The machine must be able to fool the interrogator to think that it is a human communicating with him. If it is able to do so, it passes the Turing test and thus labeled able to have human-level intelligence. There is a really, really great movie called The Imitation Game, which is about Alan Turing's life and his contribution to the war. I really encourage everyone who likes watching movies to have a go at it. We have a small timeline to reach the modern artificial intelligence model. Over the period from 1950 to the early 2000s, the interest in AI fluctuated very widely. there was a period of AI golden years, whereas there was a lot of interest, a lot of governmental funding, and a lot of inpouring of different specialists into the field of artificial intelligence. However, in between these years, there were two periods of time called the AI winters, particularly from 1974 to 1980. Whereas financial intellectual interest was greatly reduced, there was very minimal research towards artificial intelligence. However, from the 1980s, thereabout 1997, rapid development of expert systems allowed computers to perform certain specialized tasks with the efficiency of human experts in that field. So these machines could now actually outperform, not only perform at the same level, experts in very niche areas. For example, for the first time in 1997, IBM's Deep Blue, an artificial intelligence device, beat the world chess champion for the first time. And this continued to evolve into very many different expert systems in data analytics, as chatbots, as proofs for mathematical equations, and whatnot. In 2014, however, for the first time ever, a chatbot named Eugene Goostman passed the Turing test. It successfully fooled a panel of interviewers around 65% of the time, I believe, into thinking that he was a human conversing with them through a screen. And this was truly a breakthrough at the time, because imagine a machine successfully fooled a human to think it was a human. Eugene Goostman is actually a website you can go to and speak with this chatbot online. It's completely free. You can ask it whatever questions you want and see how it converses with you. The above picture here is IBM's Deep Blue when it beat the chess champion. Moving on, we will sort of draw out how AI infiltrated the biomedical domain. So initially, AI did not enter the medical field directly. It entered the biomedical field in terms of basic research and biomedical research. So it has been in that field for many years. It's been incorporated into drug discovery, medical imaging, data analytics, bioinformatics, and genetic processing, among very many other patient experience optimizations and non-clinical applications. So in the last 2 or so decades, it has begun to be applied to clinical medicine in the form of diagnostic evaluation for pathologists, radiology, and most recently, AI-assisted robotic surgeries. Now, with the advent of virtual reality added to artificial intelligence, this has enabled surgeons to be able to completely simulate surgeries before they actually carry them out. They can anticipate complications. Through CT scans, they can sort of form a model, a 3D model of their patient from reconstruction, from CT scans, and they can simulate the whole surgery to anticipate any bleeds, any sort of abscess formations, any abnormalities in anatomy that the patient may have. Robotic surgery has also now allowed experienced surgeons to perform procedures without even being in the same room, which is truly astounding if you think about it. Currently, there is the Da Vinci Surgical Suite, which we have a picture of here behind. This is a picture from the AUB Urology department, actually, which is one of the 2 departments that has completely robotic surgery. We have urology and we have the OBGYN departments. They have a complete robotic surgery suite, whereas the surgeon does not touch the patient at all. They only use the device. And this is now being explored to allow expert surgeons to perform surgeries even if they are outside of the country. Now explore some attitudes in medical students towards AI in medical education. The way in which AI was introduced to clinical medicine is considered unusual by some educators and practitioners, because usually when there is a progression of new technologies or new procedures, they arise from educational hubs, from research industries, from universities, and then they are adopted into the main productive industry. However, AI seemed to skip that step when it went into medical practice, because the American Medical Association reports that the current state of AI curricula in medical schools is very lacking, with only a few select institutions reporting its incorporation. So the advent of AI and the use of AI in clinical medicine started before it actually had a basis in the medical schools. So now medical students and schools are left struggling to try and catch up with this information, developing new programs and initiatives to encourage involvement. Decades of unchanged pre-medical requirements at medical schools across the world have always neglected the importance of math and coding courses that are required for the development and use of AI. So it is easy to apply AI in a sense, but if you do not understand the fundamentals behind it, you will not be able to contribute to its development. You may be trained to use it, but you don't understand how it is working. You just know that you are using it. So the older medical students and even some of the practicing attending physicians do not have an understanding of AI and how it works properly, simply because this was not required of them and it was not deemed important at the time. A very good initiative that has recently been started at AUBMC is the Artificial Intelligence in Medicine program. This is now encouraging and providing funding for research projects in artificial intelligence applications to clinical medicine. Thank you to Dr. Beatrice Khater, who pointed out this recently published study by Dr. George Duma et al., an alumni of AUBFM. This study was published, I believe, this year, and it studied the attitudes of Lebanese medical students towards AI in medical education. It showed that approximately 96% of the respondents agree that AI will play an integral role in the healthcare of the future. And a majority of them agreed that it will disproportionately affect some specialties above others, particularly radiology, pathology, and I believe there was also surgery, which are the most common applications and the only applications in the Middle East that are being used currently, as we are sort of lacking behind the Western world in terms of applications to clinical medicine. This increased the worry that this will render human physicians expendable or less likely to find a job, and it affected their choice of specialty in a good proportion. This trend can also be seen at AUBMC because more and more projects are beginning to incorporate AI into studies. New applications in ophthalmology, psychiatry, and radiology are taking the spotlight currently at AUBMC. I know of a few that are studying keratoconus, for example, trying to predict keratoconus for ophthalmology. There are studies that are implementing AI to try and find risk factors for ICU delirium, among other applications. Now, to highlight some of the benefits of AI in medical education, I want to highlight that the discussion I am putting forth today is neither to discourage nor encourage application of AI, but simply to put forth considerations that need to be taken into account before this is implemented or in parallel with the implementation of AI. Because while it does carry a lot of potential benefit, both in education and in medical practice, it also has risks that sometimes may be downplayed because of the excitement of its novelty, as well as the cost of having these considerations taken into account. Now, there are a few points here, and of course, there are a lot more benefits, but I did not want to go into too much detail. So AI will provide real-time data and feedback to the students as they are taking exams. It can also be designed to have adaptive assessments, which takes into account the different types of learning that every student may have. Some have a visual learning, some have strengths and weaknesses in particular areas. When you have a single exam designed for, say, a class of 98 medical students, some will have strengths in some areas and weaknesses in others. Integration of AI into testing can optimize that by reducing the number of questions from the student's strength and increasing the number of questions from the student's weakness to sort of fortify that area. Second, AI may streamline tasks and reduce massive memorization needs. I think any medical students who are watching today and anyone you would ask, and I believe even attendings agree that there is such a mass of information that medical students are expected to learn and retain and memorize. AI can take some of that load off, because it will make everything so very accessible, and it will eliminate some processes that a student or a physician would normally need to do that he or she no longer needs to do. Third, it will save time and responsibility by automation of assessments and validation. There would be a reduced need for staff or reduced workload for existing staff as well. It can assist in research and optimize analysis of massive data sets, as was already mentioned. You can study 10,000 scans within a month, whereas a human or a human physician trying to assess that would take maybe a year, if not more. It can reduce student stress and burnout by reducing the workload. It can provide more objective assessments, especially in things such as OSCEs, because OSCEs are knowledge-based. And a lot of times this is influenced by having the simulated patient, whether they actually understand what you were trying to say, a lot of times because they are not medical students or in the medical field themselves. You may word something differently and they think you did not mention that point, whereas you did, just in a different way, because they function off of a checklist. And AI replacement to that would have the different iterations of the same concept in different wordings and different presentations. Lastly, it can make global assessments fairer and more standardized. This is the aspect that would level the field for applicants. Just like we have the STEP exam and in-house exams and whatnot, comparing it between universities in the same country and universities in different countries, AI can give you a more global level to compare students at. Right. Moving to the ethical considerations of AI in medical education, we have multiple aspects to consider when we want to implement such a multifaceted tool to medical education and to clinical medicine in general. Students are already expected to absorb and retain massive amounts of information, majority of which they receive from instructors' experiences and teaching. So replacing this experience by an AI, especially if used in instruction rather than only assessment, removes the rich variety that comes from the different methods of explanation from one instructor to another, as well as the perhaps rare cases that they come across in their individual practices. There are two different types of issues that we need to consider. There are intrinsic issues that come with AI, and there are global issues that come with the implementation of AI. Some of the intrinsic issues are that they are problems that arise from the very design and nature of artificial intelligence. AI is a neural network that is trained on existing data sets, and it develops a pattern recognition systems, as was explained through Hebbian learning, and this results in decision-making when new cases are presented to it. So AI always have a training set and then an evaluation set whenever it is being developed. So whatever data it is given during training is what sets the decisions it will take. However, once a neural network is set up and trained, the way it actually functions is a black box to us. We have no idea how it functions. The information that is put into the neural network cannot be localized on any particular node that was mentioned before. It is spread throughout the whole system. So no single node has a concept of its own stored in it. Therefore, we cannot track the thought process, if you want, of the AI. You only give it an input and it gives you an output in response. So this introduces a very important question of accountability and liability. Who is held responsible for any mistakes in either healthcare decisions or in assessment errors? You cannot ask the AI, why did you decide that? It will simply tell you that this was the output that I received. So is the AI held responsible? Can it be held responsible at all? Is the developer held responsible? Is the person who trained it? These are very pertinent questions. A second concern is bias control. AI is trained on datasets, and biased datasets will lead to biased assessments and diagnostics, which may be counterproductive, especially when we are trying to teach the opposite to future physicians. The bias may be against their own, because a majority of research and data that we have is based on white males and very little information is available on persons of color and women. This is fortunately increasing now. We're having more studies that include both women and persons of color. However, the majority of data, and AI needs massive data sets in the millions of entries to be able to be trained. So this will provide an intrinsic bias to it when it is given a particular, say, creatinine level that has been standardized to the 70 kilogram white male. And if you are given, for example, an African-American woman who is obese per se, it will have a difference or have a difficulty in trying to assess that because of the mass information being biased towards something else. So the small number of cases that apply to this patient will be diluted in the mass of information. The third concern is frailty and hijacking. AI is a software in the end, so it is liable to hacking and manipulation, which is extremely dangerous no matter how robust the system is designed, because you could influence clinical decisions, you can influence a person's career in terms of assessment. However, more importantly is something called frailty. And this is something I learned about recently through a presentation that was held at AUB. Frailty is a concept that is very rarely discussed in artificial intelligence, which means that once you train an AI on a particular set of information, changing even one factor in a presented case can completely change what the AI recognizes it as. This is especially true in radiological or pathological assessment, in visual processing. If you add a particular square of a certain color to the corner of an image, it completely changes what the AI recognizes it as. I was trying to find the image online, but I couldn't find it actually. There was one where you had a picture of a duck and the AI could identify it as a duck. However, once they added a multicolor square to the corner of the picture, it read the duck as a hammer. We don't really understand how that interferes with it, but that is a process called hijacking frailty, which is very important to take into account as well once we are working with clinical decisions that will affect patients' lives. Finally, we have the global issues. These issues arise from the massive power imbalances that AI can potentially induce or exacerbate. The software requires not only huge power supplies, but also massive computing powers, a luxury that not all nations or even institutions in the same countries may be able to afford. As mentioned previously, AI has been implemented from the clinic down to teaching, not the other way around. Thus, majority of faculty themselves have not been exposed to AI fundamentals or development, so they are not qualified or able to teach these concepts to incoming medical students. This leads to further disparities for countries and institutions that cannot afford to train their faculty or recruit new faculty, further increasing the divide between their training of their students and what the industry or the clinical practice has gotten to. Secondly, AI is often developed and designed by the richest of countries, those that have the expertise and funding to be able to do so. So AI is trained on data sets that apply to those populations and cannot be translated to global populations in both diagnostics and education. This leads again further to the bias or dangerous misuse of skewed AI. For example, say countries in the global south who are often, unfortunately, engrossed in conflict, especially during these periods. If they are somehow to be able to utilize the AI, if, say, it was donated to them to help enhance their education, the data sets upon which the AI was trained is mainly Western populations. If they apply it to their own populations, which may have different genetics, which may have different risk factors, literally any number of characteristics may be changed. It will give you a skewed result because it is not used to seeing this data. However, the AI does not know that it is not used to be seeing this data. So it will give a different diagnosis or result, which may be very dangerous for patients and educators. Finally, the restrictive nature of massive demands for AI implementation will place excellent foreign applicants to residencies in the developed world at a disadvantage. They have not been trained to use these systems. They do not know how they work. They are not used to using these devices that are common there and are commonplace in any sort of practice, or becoming commonplace at least. This leads to further bias in selection of residency candidates, which is already a very big issue, especially to those applying to the US and Europe, as we are considered after almost all the local applicants are considered. So this places an even larger gap in terms of quality of education and training and the ability to move up in institutions, if you'd like. Most importantly, and the last point I want to highlight, as Edmund Pellegrino noted, medicine should be the most humane of sciences, the most empiric of the arts, and the most scientific of the humanities. Medicine has, since its induction, been regarded as a sacred profession, if you'd like. It has to treat not simply diseases, but the patient who has the disease. We are not machines, or we should not be machines, and AI threatens to steal what little is left of this. It is a crucial characteristic of medicine and medical practice. And in a world with increasing moral and empathetic atrophy due to the atrocities we see every day and due to the highlighting of materialistic things and financial considerations in healthcare, do we really need less human contact in training of future physicians? More machines that work on algorithms and not take into account the different nuances of emotion, of vulnerability, of the very many different things that you encounter in a patient interaction. A caregiver in one of our courses once said to me, they are a caregiver to a child who was on palliative treatment. And they said that their child is connected to 5 machines sustaining their life and their treatment. Do not be the 6th machine. They need a human to treat their child and their condition. So I leave you with the question of, will AI really widen the gap, or will it level the field? And in particular, this is up for interpretation, be it in likelihood of progressing to other institutions, be it likelihood of implementation, or simply how good of a person you are as a physician as well. I would love to hear any feedback or any questions you may have, and thank you very much for listening, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's an excellent presentation. I'm sure there will be a plethora of questions, so the floor is open.
Hello, thank you very much for this very informative presentation. My opinion is that AI will come and take everything in its way in relation to technology, procedures, but I think this should strengthen the ethics and professionalism of physicians, because it will be the only thing left. If we don't emphasize it, and if we don't work on it, and if we don't strengthen the teaching in our schools, I think this will be very serious. Then machines will govern us and will control our work and will control everything. So what I think, or I see, that is that on one side, machines will take some work of physicians, yes, but it will make them be much more aware and very conscious about their role as physicians, as communicators, as professionals, and as ethical people. This is what I think. And let's see, the presentation was very enlightening, and I think the future is for AI, but it's also for ethics, because it's the only thing left for us, I think.
I do agree, and this is actually one of the considerations and solutions that is now being offered. There is a group in Germany that is working on implementing the German law in terms of code to be introduced to AI. However, again, this is law. Law is not always the most ethical thing or the most right thing to do, but this protects the developers by having the law actually codified. This also means that ethical law or ethical codes can be incorporated into AI itself to safeguard against these mistakes. But I do agree that it will encourage physicians and students to be more interested in bioethics and ethics in general, because that will be the deciding factor in what sets them apart from the rest of these machines that can replace them.
It will be the extra step that the physician will take. So they might be equal when it comes to AI, but it's here where where patients might find the difference between physicians. They will find the ethical, the professional, as compared to less ethical or professional. But with respect to technology, they might be the same, yani. So this is why I think the future is for AI, but it's also for ethics. So that's why we have to emphasize this to our students and to our people.
Dr. Arawi is doing an amazing job of that.
Yes, sure.
Do we have
Thank
any
you
other
so,
questions?
Habibi. Thank you. Hand in hand with you and the students and the team, of course.
Definitely.
I have a question. As a person who has no actual medical background, um, the now like you were talking about teaching medical students about AI, like all the things that you can do with AI, all the contributions, all of that, but especially when it comes to things like surgery or treatments or diagnostics, how can you explain to the patient that they should be able to entrust their lives in a machine? Because I feel like that's something that can be very challenging as well.
Of course, and this goes back to what Dr. Musharrafia was saying. This will be what sets the physicians of the future apart from the machines. Currently, the way it is applied is AI is assisting, but is not completely conducting any procedures or any assessments on their own. They are simply designed to suggest things that are then confirmed by experts in the field. So it is moving towards that. Yes, this may become an issue later on, but as of currently, it isn't yet. And that's why it's important to teach the medical students how this AI functions and how it's developed, because then they can relay that to the patients who will need to sort of trust their bodies or their health to the influence of this machine.
Yeah, I suppose definitely if you can, I mean, if the doctor, if the person's doctor is someone who is an authority when it comes to this machine or this sort of implementation of AI, then that would definitely help a lot when it comes to credibility and trust. So yeah, cool.
Dr. Awar, you had a question?
Yes, hello. Thank you, Joseph, and congratulations for a job very well done. It showed your breadth of knowledge in the field. Excellent, especially starting with the historical aspects and up to the present day AI that is practiced in medicine. What I would say is that we are trying to handle AI and get it more and more into to the side of the patient, actually, to help in diagnosis, in the management, and such things. This is the way that we see AI coming to us nowadays. Of course, in the background, there are a lot of things, a lot of concerns, maybe, yes. But at the present time, this is what we have, especially, let me say, in the field of microbiology and infectious diseases. However, the caveat in this is the expense. We can apply advanced knowledge by AI. However, we have got to pay a price for it. So it becomes expensive for patients. If we want to request, for example, PCR testing on a CSF sample or on blood or on some other specimen, it is expensive actually, especially nowadays for us, the Lebanese. So I think that we'll come to terms with that especially if we can cover the cost. However, I'm all with you for the concerns and with the colleagues and participants about the concerns with AI and the downside of it, or the dark side, let's say, of it, that can be made use of by some other people. However, if I may suggest one thing, is that for the future, one idea that frightens me, not specifically AI, but actually making robots, which sometimes you hear some news that they are being humanized in their reactions, in their expressions, in their emotions. It's a frightening idea that you may be dealing with a robot in front of you with human expression sometime, maybe not far from now. So if you would like to open up on this, let's say in a talk in the future about that, especially to consider robots in medicine, let's say, specifically robots. And the other thing, if I may kindly advise, that if you would put the references wherever you are talking about a specific reference, to say like the one you mentioned about Domat, the AUB FM graduate, I think it would be useful to put the reference at the bottom of the slide. Otherwise, great job, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I actually had the references on the last slide, but I do agree I should put them where they are mentioned. I think that would be better. In regards to the robots, actually, they already do exist, and this was something that we researched. There are different types of robots, some that are used for emotional support at hospitals, especially during COVID, some that are used in the OBGYN departments in terms of when there's a miscarriage, they provide emotional support, if you'd like, to the mothers as well. And this was something that can definitely be elaborated on, and it was discussed before by Dr. Arawi in a talk as well. I did not want to delve into it here too much because it would make the talk very long. But indeed, there already is a few robots that have been completely autonomous and they have human expressions. And it is getting to a point whereas at some point in the near future, you may be unable to tell the robot from a human because all of these programs have passed the Turing test. So if you're not able to see the robot, you cannot tell that it is a robot talking to you. And they're now augmenting it to actually have the expressions and lifelike skin, which I do agree is interesting, but also quite scary.
Thank you.
Joseph, I'm interested in AI. We can work in the curriculum for medical students. I'm ready if you. I'm sure you are working, but the subjects attracts me صراحة.
Would love to look into it.
Yes.
So Joe has also been working with us on a publication, which is almost done. And we're very happy to have you with us on this, Joe. Anyone else wants to ask or comment on the presentation?
If I may, I just I had a question. I don't know if you had the opportunity to see examples of what is being done in medical schools with regards to curricula. I mean, the aim is to, as you said, teach medical students, but you can only teach them. I mean, what are the expectations? Because at the end of the day, medical curricula are already overloaded with with a lot of subjects. So what are some examples of what is being done already or what can be done, if you have?
Yeah, some suggestions are that rather than actually changing only the medical school curricula, the pre-medical requirements have not been changed for a very long time. And especially in liberal education institutions, there are a lot of courses that are required. They are important to give you a well-rounded individual, of course, but there are also things that can be incorporated, whereas, for example, pre-medical applicants have to take multiple humanity courses, multiple civilization courses, which I do agree are important, but can also become more relevant and more applied if courses in computer science are included, in basic coding. The thing is, when it comes to AI, it is just a layering of very many different simple concepts. So once you actually understand how the concept works, the very complex emergent property, if you want, that comes out of it is very easy to understand. But you need to have the fundamentals in order to reach that. So it can be implemented in the curricula at an earlier level to then allow, for example, one course to be enough or one module to be enough in medical school. And it doesn't have to be an individual module. It can just be applied as an aspect of the modules.
Joseph, I fully agree. Also, I think even the curriculum in medical school يعني can be changed لأنه for example many universities in the US المدفور عندهم كله صار loose يعني electives or targeted towards where the student is going to specialize. So I think there's a room for this. Personally, I took a course in Python لأنه كان كتير معقدني how the computer works, and I believe now that there should be a course that is required programming for medical students لأنه unless you know it يعني أنا ما كنت أعرف شيء فيها بس now I understand the concept and the importance of it. So I think yes, undergraduate يعني preparation of medical school for medical school should include courses like this. يعني from whatever major the student is coming, they should have some basic يعني programming or AI or something related that would facilitate for them the understanding and the concept of AI in medicine.
So Maya, we've been suggesting this for a few years. I think it's now that is becoming more important, I guess.
Yes, sure.
The thing is, I think even the current attempts at teaching us some programming mainly come in the form of statistical analysis packages. But at least from my experience last year, even that was not taught to us. We were simply given a few examples and resources to go learn it ourselves if we'd like to, which unfortunately we don't really have that much free time with the existing curriculum to go learn it ourselves. And I do think, like you said, Doctor, it can be modified by having a lot of important, but maybe not necessarily learned or retained information, because you have access to everything nowadays through the internet.
Sure.
That can be replaced with, rather than giving us the information, how to find this information, which is more efficient.
Exactly. يعني we sometimes overload our students with information that they don't need, they never use in their lives يعني in their career. So do we need to put all this information in their curriculum? Maybe we have to exchange يعني or to replace or be يعني up to date أكتر with what's going on in the world and technology. This is my impression. We should upgrade our يعني our courses, maybe remove some of them, get more courses like you mentioned in AI, in how machines work, يعني, and keep the ethics and professionalism and definitely the other important stuff, but this should be included يعني. And this is what I think, whether it's undergraduate or if they have not taken it in the undergraduate, to be a prerequisite for the medical school or during med 1, they should take it like in the summer or, but I think these are important courses.
So I guess if there are no more questions,
I think there are, yes.
Thank you, Joseph, وthank you, دكتورة عراوي. عن جد very interesting session.
تسلمي دكتورة مشرفية، تسلمي. في شي questions بعد؟
There are two raised hands.
Hi, Joseph. Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Mr. Farouk, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Joseph. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much for the presentation. I joined late. I'm a professor at Ain Shams University and a WHO staff working in the Eastern Mediterranean region. I want to give a quick comment on the education part because there is a gap in the cross-cutting work between computer science, engineering, and medicine, and this is confusing all academician students, master degree students, and professors because people go on their own, try to collect information just at taking courses for Python and so on, but they never mature as full data scientists. While they need, there are basic knowledge that is required for them. The dilemma is that such a domain should always be led by the medical sector, not the technologists, although I'm a technology enthusiast. And the problem is that in several countries along 20 years, I've seen failures because it's simply delivered to the hands of ICT experts, Minister of ICT, Minister of Technology, and whatever, data and AI and intelligence. And the result always for the health sector is that it's the last sector to properly adopt such technology after years and years where it is properly adopted in banking, finance, telecom, and several other domains. So my note, not really a question for you, or maybe you can comment, is that there is a need to develop, to rethink the careers and the skills that is now not appropriate for low middle income countries, Africa, Eastern Mediterranean region, and maybe actually the well-developed countries. So this is for you. Thank you so much for your time, efforts, and slides. Over.
Thank you for your contribution. And yes, I do agree. And like I mentioned before, unfortunately, the medical field is often just given tools and instruments and taught how to just apply them to the limited procedure or the limited thing they are trying to do then. But they do not really understand how the device works or the tool works, which unfortunately leads to a failure when they try to apply it somewhere else. Failures which may be dangerous sometimes in the case of medical applications.
You're absolutely right. At Ain Shams in Egypt, we developed like a bubble or a safe haven called Ain Shams Virtual Hospital with a lot of labs for trials, tests, but it's still far from being mature. And we would appreciate any help to put us on the right track to standardize the content, the way research is done. So for all the participants, it would be an honor to receive your support. Thank you so much.
It would be a pleasure to get in touch. If you could please leave your email in the chat and we can be in touch to see how we can possibly help each other.
A pleasure, Dr. Farouk. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Anas, you had a question?
Hi, Joseph. How are you?
All good.
So I attended a talk recently about AI, and it was more focused on sort of using AI in terms of prevention of disease and screening tools, etc. You know, so let's say recognizing certain patterns for certain patients and trying to use screening as in a more efficient way. Now, the one thing I found interesting that sort of related to that was when you mentioned the idea of hijacking. So, for example, how certain parameters, if they're changed, it may lead to a completely different outcome. So I guess my main question is, if you want to touch upon it, I know it's not the main focus of the talk, but I thought it was related a bit to hijacking. How would you find the balance between, let's say, human control and relying on AI when it comes to issues like these, especially since, let's say, an error in an issue like this would impact many people, assuming you're doing a wide screening, you're using AI for screening or for disease prevention, etc.
Now, in particular, usually when you have implementation of AI, at least so far, how developed it is, there is always a final block, if you want, in terms of needing a human to finalize any decisions or outputs. However, there's a very interesting study by Dr. Buainaya, who works at, I believe, I forget the name of the institution, but she's been doing research in terms of implementing Bayesian filters for AI, particularly when you're working with screening, be it for radiologic or pathologic screening or whatnot. So this thing sort of allows the AI to become self-aware in a sense, but not really in terms of consciousness, more like whenever the AI gives you a decision, it is able to also give you a percentage of certainty of that decision. So say, for example, it sees a case that it has not been trained on. It will tell you, I think it is this. However, I am 20% sure it is this. So that sort of flags to the operator, if you'd like, the final stop, that please make sure of this, confirm that this is actually there, because AI is not sure. So that clarifies, if you want, a little bit the black box scenario we were talking about. We still don't understand how the decision is reached, but we can know how sure the AI is of that decision, which I think is a step in the right direction to sort of combat this issue of hijacking or rare cases, if you'd like.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's still a lot to learn, but it's quite an interesting field. Thank you for a great talk.
My pleasure. I believe Johnny Asaf had the last question.
Thank you, Mr. Bashir, for such a wonderful talk. As a bioinformatician, we received some training about artificial intelligence. I found this talk to be a good balance between informative and not too technical. When it comes to the applications of education, when you want to add more education in the medical field about this, bioinformatics is a good place to start because, as a note, let's just say, because in undergraduate courses it can be given. There was a course in AB called Introduction to Bioinformatics that gave a good foundation for discussing artificial intelligence later on. And I find that even in the medical school in AUB, you do have one professor who does have some training in bioinformatics. I think this is a good start to find a place to maybe develop a module or some sort of educational toolkit for discussing artificial intelligence. Because I agree with you, using a tool while not understanding how it works is the same as prescribing medication without knowing the mechanism through which it acts. You cannot really to trust a machine without having any knowledge in the way that it works.
Yes, I do agree. And unfortunately, this is one thing I also suggested when I was an undergraduate student, particularly in the biology bachelor's of science. There is no tailoring of the degree. It is very, very general. So, for example, if you're pre-medical, you are not obliged to take any courses other than Bio 201, 202, and biochemistry and organic chemistry. However, you can take the study of plants, of fish, of insects, of birds, which is important, I guess. It gives you also a background of biology. It is a biology degree. However, there's no pre-medical emphasis. We have courses such as microbiology, cell biology, parasitology, virology, bioinformatics, but you're not obliged to take any of them. Unfortunately, these are often ignored because they are difficult courses and students focus on raising their grades in order to be able to get into medical school. A lot of times they think, oh, we'll learn this later on. Then they get to medical school. They don't have time to learn this later on their own. And it is not emphasized in medical school either. So they get to practicing eventually and they have not had this exposure that they need. And I believe Dr. Zara'et is the bioinformatics expert at ABFM. He works with next generation sequencing and whatnot. I think he would be an interesting person to reach out to as well.
I think, Joseph, I think the undergraduate should be like longitudinal to the medical school. يعني the courses should be as if continuation. مش إنه هيك مثل as now as it's happening now. courses from here and there, although they are biology and they are chemistry, they are very relevant, but they need to have a link between them. Yani, you start in the undergraduate and then like it's longitudinal going all through and makes sense to the courses that comes after, you see. So I fully agree on what is said. You need to know the mechanism, otherwise it doesn't make sense and you don't trust صراحة. You don't trust the machine then. So I think we have to do a lot بالundergraduate كمان يعني.
Exactly. I do agree. The example Johnny gave as well, for example, in medication, if you don't know its mechanism,
Exactly, very true.
yeah,
Yes, very
if
true.
you're presented with a say rare case of something, but you don't know how it works, you might mistakenly kill your patient if you don't know how the medication interacts.
يعني أنا I used to fear from machines صراحة computers وهيك, بس when I took Python and I realized how it works عن جد it made my life easier. صرت أفهم يعني how it works, how it's trustworthy or not. عرفت يعني لا, it makes a difference really.
Exactly. You learn how to communicate with this machine or understand
Exactly.
what it's telling you.
I hope we will work on this.
So we don't want to keep people too long. I think
طولنا شوي, yes.
we have covered, no, but it was a very interesting discussion really, and the questions and the comments were very enriching as well. So I think we have no more questions. Yes, so thank you, Joseph, for everything and for your really عن جد شابوبا يعني hats off for this amazing job, and I'm sure you're still working on this topic with Dr. Arawi to hopefully take it further and to publish what you talked about today. And yes, and hopefully based on the comments of people, and there will be, it seems, future collaborations as well, hopefully emanating from this.
I do hope so, and thank you everyone for attending, and thank you to SHBPP and the team for the opportunity, and thank you for the comments as well. I have learned some important points that may actually contribute to the research work we're working on as well.
Okay, thank you. We shall wrap it up. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll hope to see you soon again in the next talk, hopefully.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. Bye.